Hi, everybody. This is Ukraine, Voices from Within. My name is Ana and I'm here with Maxym Panchenko. So kind of crazy story. We're cousins. We never met in person, but the war in Ukraine kind of brought us together and kind of brought us to talk about what's happening and literally share with you more about what's happening in Ukraine. And we decided to just record a podcast and bring you voices from Ukraine, but not Ukrainian voices, but people that chose to drop everything that they have in their life, go to Ukraine and make a difference. So first of all, Maxym, how's Kyiv? We haven't talked about it for a while. I know that you've been all over and also moving around. Tell me more. What's going on? How is it on the ground? Because I'm not there. I'm far, far, far away. But how is it right now in Ukraine?
Well, first of all, good time of day to everybody listening to this. And thank you for having me on this podcast. And well, yes, it's been a while since we talked about the situation here on the ground. And indeed, things have changed much because the part of the country that is not under war these days, it tries to get back to the conventional life. And that also goes for Kyiv. Kyiv tries to live the pre-war in a pre-war manner. That's very visible. And in that sense, the life in the part of the country that is not under war is a bit similar to what we had in 2015, because previously in 2014, the war had broken out and everybody was so agitated about, those things. And then people started getting accustomed to what was going on. So there is kind of a parallel about that. However, we still have many hotspots that have now concentrated like to the east and to the south of the country. There is a major thing brewing in the south these days because the biggest battle that is looming ahead for the time being is the one for Kherson and for the Kherson region, which is to the immediate north of the Crimean Peninsula. And, everybody keeps looking that way to see what happened. We are very privileged to welcome our guest, who is Sergio Alarcon, who is an American citizen who grew up all over the US and who is a professional military serviceman. He served during 6 years in the US Marines, and now he's working at a fire department as a lieutenant. But still, when he saw what was developing here in Ukraine, and notwithstanding him having family, him having kids, he still decided that his mission was to come to Ukraine and to help fellow Ukrainians to fight the evil that has come to our land. So we're going to talk a bit about his experience here, about his thoughts about Ukraine, about his thoughts about the war that is going on here, and maybe some thoughts about the prospects, how this is gonna end somewhere, sometime. So we'll have to see. Welcome, Sergio.
Hey, thanks, Maxim. Thanks for the introduction, and great to see you again. It's been a little over a month now, right?
Yes. So a bit of a story behind this is that we actually had a chance to meet with Sergio several times when he was here in Ukraine, as he said a month ago. And I got a chance to meet him before his departure to the east, and I'm sure he will plunge into that in more detail when he went to Pisky, which is near the Donetsk region and next to Donetsk city itself, that has been occupied for 8 years. So that is the very, very front line. And yes, so that will be very interesting to hear about his experience there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be on the podcast as well, and thanks for the invite. And I look forward to just chatting about, my experience there. So
You literally dropped everything that you had in your life. You put a pause and you went fighting for a country or contributing for a country that you have no relationship with. So it's kind of, first of all, it blew me away, and Maxym as well, and our family as well. Like, why? And I'm sure that our audience are also interested to know why to do such a thing. So enlighten us, tell us a little bit more why you made this choice.
Well, you're definitely right. I got no ties to Ukraine. I'm straight out Latino. So far from that side of the world. But you know, I have to say, being a father of two beautiful kids, my responsibility is them. And as I saw this war kick off and saw this country, Ukraine, this beautiful country being taken over, their freedom, their right to live and choose from another, I honestly thought of my two kids and thought, how is this going to affect them as they get older? And I really, as a father, I want to give, like any father does, I want to give my kids the very best, and that includes the very safest world possible. That's the reason why I served in the military. It's the reason why I deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, was to fight enemies that were looking to do harm to anybody in this world, enemies that have no sense of feelings of who they kill and what they destroy. So I saw Ukraine under attack and thought of my kids and sat down and said, you know what? I need to do something. I have the training and I have the experience of combat that maybe I could offer some kind of help. So that was kind of the first mindset of seeing the news and watching everything unfold. And then I kind of, as we look at Ukraine and Russia, I mean, it's pretty simple. I've talked to so many people who have asked the same question to me when I was there, and I'm just like, it's a very simple answer. Like, there's only one person who's not supposed to be in Ukraine, and unfortunately, that's the Russians. And so, the idea of, the idea of what was, right and wrong is very clear there in Ukraine. And like anything, I'm a first responder, and I have the desire to help and to serve and to keep people safe. If I can't keep them safe, then bear arms and do it a different way. So,
first of all, thank you. Thank you as a Ukrainian, as a human being in this world, to know that there are people like you that just go out there, put their life on hold, and think about others before they think about themselves. So thank you for doing that. And I know that your journey wasn't easy, and we spoke a lot during your journey to Ukraine. You don't know the language, you don't know the culture. You literally crossed miles to get to the border of Ukraine with huge question mark with what's next. So tell us more how it was. Like, you first landing Poland in Warsaw, getting yourself to the border, crossing the border. How was it like? Like, tell us a little bit more.
I did tell you that I was just gonna walk across, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a very humble experience to walk across into a country that is now considered a war zone. Like you said, not knowing the language, not knowing anybody, having one contact, but he was hundreds of miles away, and that's Max, and not knowing how I was going to get to him and if I would even see him. But yeah, I just remember grabbing my bags. I spent a little time at the border asking around, see what I could do to help. And when I realized that things there were just kind of at a standstill, I needed to push forward into why I went to Ukraine. So sure enough, I did. I crossed over with my bags in hand. Who knows how much they weighed. And it was a hot day. Like, everybody told me Ukraine was going to be freezing. So majority of the weight in my bag is like for cold weather gear. So I'm sitting there just walking into Ukraine down this road to a refugee camp that they had set up in a school. And I'm just sweating. I'm like, oh my goodness. I was like, I got jeans and boots on, and I was like, it's so hot here. um, but very, like I said, it's a very humble experience to rely on complete strangers, and not just strangers. These are people from a whole different world, a world that I am unfamiliar with. And so to give so to it really humbles you, I think, because you have to rely on other people who don't speak your language, and you hope to pray that they have a little bit of broken English. And then Google translation helped out quite a bit. So yeah, the full experience of going in there and not knowing where to go, it was very much just leave it up to faith, to be honest with you.
And I have a follow-up question about your further experience here in Ukraine. After you, I know that you had several attempts at where to apply your skills to help Ukrainians, but you ended up going to the place where the hell had broken loose, to the east of the country, and you were serving there. So what were your impressions about the battlefield, and what was it in comparison to your previous experience? Because as you said, you had done several tours as a US military. So what is it in comparison? What were your impressions, and how is it different, if it is?
Oh, I mean, night and day difference. My time in Iraq and Afghanistan, two different had two different missions between those two countries. But on the other hand, I was on the side where we had all the safety equipment, we had the up armors, we had our, the gear, and we weren't being hit by, our enemy didn't, basically small arms and homemade IEDs and every now and then RPG that we would have to deal with. Nothing like what I experienced there in Ukraine on the east. Never been on the receiving end of a tank fire. I've never been on a receiving end of artillery and being shelled. I have been under machine gun fire and small arms, but nothing of having the earth shake around you and just everything around you seemed to be, getting destroyed. So the difference between the two, 9-day difference. My time there was a very much eye-opening experience, and very much, comes to show just how amazing and strong Ukrainian military men and women are there, to constantly being under that kind of heavy fire and willing to stay there and fight, knowing that it only takes a lucky shot from the Russians to take you out. Because a lot of their shots are just random. They're not really pinpointed to anything. It was very much different. I still think about that quite a bit till today, of the difference between my time in the Marine Corps and my time there in Ukraine. So,
and now that you look back at your time here in Ukraine, not just at the front line, but generally, is there any moment that impacted you so much that you're going to take it with you for the rest of your life? Is there something exceptionally memorable about how things have been here during your stay?
I think I'm going to take a lot of things that I experienced in Ukraine and carry it through my life. There's a lot, and it's hard to kind of pinpoint, down to, one or two, but never thought one was never thought I would be working and operating in trenches. We see it on movies, we hear, I watch it on the History Channel. We talked about it when I was in the boot camp of Marine Corps history and the trench line and how they dug them and, just things like that. But never, ever did I thought in 2022, I would be operating and working in trenches. So that is definitely one thing I think I'm going to take back, is the the how this war is being conducted, and it's very interesting. I will tell you, I think I've, I told Anna this story, and I'm not sure. I think I maybe had mentioned it to you. Experience that I was doing some laundry one day. My camis and uniforms were pretty much exhausted, so had to wash them. And as I went to hang them up, we just had these, string across some pillars underneath this bridge that we were working and operating under. And I just finished up like hanging up the last set of camis before I had to move to the side of it to continue on, hanging stuff up. And as I relocated no more than 10 feet away, it brought me closer to a cement wall, but it put me a little bit further in the open for artillery and tank fire, and that's typically the location where we would get these hits. Well, I would say between where I just hanged the last cami to uniform to my to the other spots, it was probably less than 2 minutes, and I heard a incoming artillery come down, and I yelled at my partner, we'll call him Nomad, and said get down. And we dug down, and right when we hit the deck, the artillery hit us or hit our location no more than probably 8 feet away from us. And the only reason that him and I survived was we had moved closer to that wall, and the uniforms that we had just hung just about a minute or two ago, they were all shredded by artillery or by shrapnel. We had gotten up and we ran to the bunker to take cover because we had incoming for the next about 10 minutes. And once we were all clear, we had gone back to our location where we were just hanging our clothes, and we realized that all our clothes had been shredded by shrapnel. And that just is that was one out of a few very close calls that I experienced there in Ukraine. Something that you don't forget. You don't forget that you missed death by seconds, by minutes. And moving to the closest to the cement wall is what saved us. Because if we would have hit the deck right there where our uniform was at, we would have been hit. We would have taken shrapnel for sure. But yeah, I guess that answers your question.
It's like one of the questions that we didn't ask at the beginning is, can you share a little bit about what you did? Because you did a lot of different things, and what exactly was your job in the front lines? And also a few days ago, you shared with me a moment that you kind of take with you for your rest of your life, that you saved somebody's life, and it was kind of impactful. I think it's an important story to share with others.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was there just a little under 3 months, and basically didn't know what I was going to do. So ended up getting picked up by an American and a gentleman who was from the Netherlands. Two amazing guys, out there for the right purpose, out there to do good. And they were there about 3 weeks prior to me showing up. And so they had made some good contacts with the Ukrainian military there in Lviv. And so I got to do a lot of different jobs there. Started off training the Ukrainian military, the guard units, and working with them to get them ready to deploy. These are regular civilian Ukrainians that just got their paperwork and just showed up just weeks before to go through a quick training before they get shipped off to the front. And other guys are, volunteers that just showed up without receiving papers saying, I want to fight for my country. So we had two kind of different guys in the group, those who were forced and those who volunteered to fight. So in the I would say the first about month, was just a lot of hours of training. We ended up training up to about 600 Ukrainian military in that period of time, and putting in long hours, long days. So, and then from that point on, I headed to Kharkiv. That's, more north part of the eastern side of Ukraine, and met out with other Westerners and operated with them for a bit. We had a situation that happened that basically questioned me, or made me question where I should be. I had a very close call there that I had to reconsider my options, knowing that I am a father of two. I did come to Ukraine to help fight, and I'm willing to give my life for this country, but at the same time being smart and knowing where my worth is. So from that point, I headed back to the capital to follow some leads that led me with this organization out of Kyiv to run Kazabak, be on a Kazabak team.
Can you explain more what it is?
So Kazabak is basically, you have your Kazabak and you have your medevac. Kazabak works in the red and yellow zones, red being right up on the front, right during the trenches, or where the fight is happening, and your yellow zone is just a couple of kilometers back, where you're a little bit safer, but you're still under tank artillery fire, and let's just say a random bullet that just seems to go flying somewhere. So and then you have your green zone. So the green zone is where the medevac, when the medevac will work in between the green and the yellow. So the Kazabak, we were pulling wounded soldiers that had been hit by small arms artillery tank, and we would package them up, do our best to stop the bleeding and get them stable so we can transport them to our medevac team that was standing by in the yellow zone to hand off our patients to. So and that experience that you were what you had made mention that really kind of impacted me. We had just got to the Donetsk region area and was trying to figure out where we belong and who needed help. I mean, we showed up with this. If you saw this truck, you would. If people don't realize, Ukraine, there's no full-size pickup trucks there. There's not even trucks in Ukraine. Everybody drives vans and cars. Every car has a hitch. So to have an American F-150 pulling up in the city of Kyiv, it will turn heads. Well, then you have me, who decides, let's just weld this big ass bumper on the front of this truck. All right, let's just make this thing super American like. And so I did. I got a hold of some scrap metal welder grinder, and I put this American steel bumper with a big metal grill and a big bullhorn. And a bullhorn is basically, I don't know how to describe it. It sticks further out from the bumper. It's meant to push cattle along. If you in like Texas and other places. Yeah, so we show up in this big truck, big American truck that we built up to accomplish a mission that we had set out for, and that is to be an effective Kazabak team who is willing to work in the red and yellow zone. So we pulled up to this village to meet up with a commander, a unit, the 25th Brigade, just outside of the Donetsk region, and as we pulled up, our translator got word that they had just taken 2 casualties, and they call them 300 is a wounded soldier and 200 is deceased. So they had two 300s, and that they needed to be transported to the hospital. Well, we knew where the hospital was, and it was a distance away, and we didn't have a medevac team yet set up. So we knew that if we were going to receive these two guys, we would be booking it to the hospital to get them there and hopefully save their lives. So it's very interesting when I hear my translator speaking with other Ukrainians. It seems like it's a hot mess. That's just because I don't know the language. So we get told to meet at an intersection, and where we were supposed to receive these 300s at. And as we were waiting, my partner and our gunner, they decided to go check something out, and I'm not sure why. And so it was just me and the translator, and our translator was our driver. So he kind of filled two positions, our driver and translate. Well, the van pulls up, and I got the stretcher already prepped and ready to go in the back of the truck. My bag's already prepped, my gloves are already on, like I'm ready, but I wasn't quite ready of what I was going to experience, because we didn't really get what the injuries were. I don't know why. I'm not sure why my translator couldn't ask the question, or maybe they just didn't know. So basically, the first guy that came out of the van had his right leg completely gone from the kneecap down. And the second gentleman that came out lost his right arm from the elbow down. So two major injuries. And so I was trying to direct using English, and it doesn't work, but saying, get up, put them in the back of the truck. And so got them both in the bed of the truck, and my driver / translator takes off, and he's booking it. He is just full throttle. We're hitting crappy roads, going off road on farmer fields, cutting through fields to get to the next road to continue on our way to the Army hospital that we had stopped by previous that day. And so I'm working in conditions of the dust, and keeping myself and the patients in the back of the truck. Because the tailgate was down because of the stretcher was too long to shut the tailgate. So bracing these two guys on top of trying to stop the bleeding, because the gentleman with the missing leg, they had attempted to put a tourniquet on him. And we always teach, when you apply a tourniquet, the very first one needs to be high. So you take it all the way up to the groin and you tighten it down, no matter where the injury is located on the leg. You just put it up high and tight. Well, when I had checked the tourniquet, I realized that it wasn't tight, and the bleeding was continued to. His leg continued to bleed out. So I applied a second one just above his kneecap, and as I bear down on it, the soldier, I remember him just grabbing my arm and basically, I'm sure he was cussing at the same time telling me, don't, that hurts. But I looked at him and put my hand on his shoulder, and I kind of pushed him down. I said, dude, I'm sorry, but I have to. And I remember getting that last twist in that tourniquet, and immediately saw the blood stop squirting, and knew that I had stopped the bleeding. That was, so continued on with checking the gentleman with the missing arm. His tourniquet was properly on. His bleeding was stopped. Went back to the gentleman on the stretcher who was the leg, started cutting his clothes off, patting him down for other injuries that I couldn't see, making sure that there wasn't anything else. Also making sure that he was going into shock. So I had to, start worrying about, his breathing and making sure, to keep him warm, because he had lost lots of blood. We successfully made it to the hospital, got them both in, and helped the nurse and the doctors with a couple things there, get the IV started, and then eventually I removed myself from the scene because they had taken over. But talk about a very unexpected situation that happened, and knowing that if they would have continued on in that van, this van that is a 3-cylinder, it's not fast, it's not meant to go fast, if they would have continued on their way with these two guys, that gentleman with the leg that was missing, he would have bled out, less than maybe 10 minutes into the drive, he would have died. So that was kind of the confirmation to me that I was in the right place at the right time, and that we were meant to be in that AO, that aerial operation.
Thank you very much for that, for sharing that experience, because this is, I mean, indeed, this sounds like something from a terrible movie. And yet when you realize that this is happening and keeps happening in so many places here in Ukraine, it's heart-wrenching, I would say. And indeed, it is even hard to imagine how many thousands of similar stories are going on at the same time. So yeah, that's very sobering, not just for the world out there, but also very much for us Ukrainians also every day, because as I said, we may tend to forget a bit about the atrocities that are going in other parts of the country. So yeah, taking a step back and speaking about your experience in Ukraine, we talked about you coming to a previously unfamiliar country for you, to a previously unfamiliar people for you to help them. So you were like a blank page when it comes to any experiences, to any impressions that you may have had about Ukrainians. And what were your impressions about Ukrainians? What other thoughts about Ukraine as a nation, about our resilience, about our nature, about us in this war are? What are your impressions? What can you share about what you think about that?
Ukrainian reminds me of Americans right after 9/11. That's about the easiest way I can describe it. Very very prideful for their country, love for country, love for each other. Everybody seemed to have patience with each other there. Some Ukrainians would sit there and say, "Oh, this is not, we're typically not like this," and I'm like, I wouldn't really say that. Sometimes big events change us, who we are, and so I would say that right now, and I hope to, when I go back, hope to see the same thing I saw, and that is a very a country and people that have so much love for each other and for their freedom and their country, to willing to fight for what they have. America, we were the same way. We were pissed off after our towers and our Pentagon got hit, and we wanted answers, and we were willing to go into actions for it. So Ukraine is very much a different scenario, but same concept. Your men and women are there that are in uniform are outstanding, and talk about brave and very eager to win and push the Russians back on their side. They got a lot of heart during my first month there in the V. Like I told you, I was doing a lot of training on with the Ukrainian military, and they range from 19 to probably 65. I mean, I was pushing guys that are my dad's age, like yelling at them. Like really yelling at them and like picking them up and like dragging them because they weren't doing something right, or we would make them run with their equipment on, and these guys that are in their 50s and 60s, they're just not going to keep up with the 20s and the 30-year-old guys, right? So But at the end of the day of just running these guys to the ground, before they got formed up and marched back to their base, they came up and said, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for training. Thank you for being here. In broken English, but that just to me is talk about freaking amazing. Like, I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, it was you guys are very much a strong nation.
And I'll jump in for a second. I haven't lived in Ukraine since I was 6. So, and Maxim, please feel free to jump in and as well. And when the war broke out, a lot of people that I interact with here in the States told me, Russia is going to win. It's going to take a few days until they're going to take over Ukraine, and that's it. Don't worry about it. And it pissed me off so much. Because in my mind, after everything that Ukraine been through the entire history of Ukraine, we've been in this scenario multiple times. We have been fighting for our freedom for centuries. This is what brought Ukrainians to be who we are. We're resilient. We're strong. We're brave. We're going to be there all the time to fight for our victory. And I think Ukraine is kind of like, and also the leadership is kind of like an example for the rest of the world, what you should do for your freedom. Because I feel like sometimes people take freedom for granted, and we take freedom for granted. And I interact with a lot of people that never lived in a country that your freedom is limited. And as one that lived under the Soviet Union, our freedom was limited. So, and Maxim, jump in, because you saw Ukraine in multiple ways also after 2014 and in 2008 with different revolutions stepping in and really, stepping into, more Western free worlds. What do you have to say about this?
So the thing I would like to say in this respect is that for a regular foreigner, especially from America, which is, further away and everything, Ukraine is perceived as a country, as a territory that, if this person knows a bit of history, has switched between belonging to Russia and to some empires like Austrian-Hungarian Empire or something. So we usually are perceived by the world, or have been perceived by the world previously, as a territory that was like going as a pendulum to the east or to the west, and not even going, but taken to other entities against our will. But what people abroad need to understand is that we are talking about 40 million people here. Russia, with 140 million, is not going to tell as many as 40 million Ukrainians what Ukrainians want. It's just about this, this very big amount of people we're talking about who will not let their fate be decided for them. So that's the idea of why we need to find courage inside us to fight the second strongest army in the world, with the nuclear arsenal, with the just unfathomable number of planes and tanks that outnumber ours by tens. So emotion and motivation is what really drives us from at this point, and has been driving us from the 24th of February. And that indeed is something that I believe will lead us to, I'm not sure what the victory in this case will be, but I can't help but remember Sergio's answer when I asked him, what are your impressions about what's going to be the outcome, who's going to be the winner, if there is going to be a clear winner. And Sergio told me that based on his impressions, Ukraine had it in itself to bring its nation to the victory. And that was very inspiring, because that was something I heard not from a person who could have said so pathetically because he just believed in Ukraine, but a professional, a military serviceman who knows his job and can judge about that, from a professional standpoint. And having said that, by the way, I would like to ask probably my last question, again, about your views as those of a professional military man. From your standpoint, what do you think is the development of this war going to be in the months to come, or however much time this is going to take more? And maybe what kind and what amount of help Ukraine should receive from its partners that could serve as a game changer for Ukraine to, for it to be able to arrive at its victory in this war?
Yeah, that's it's funny. I got that question a lot from a lot of Ukrainian militaries. How long do I think this war is going to be? And it sounds like between me and other Westerners that are, have combat experience, and we kind of came into agreement that we're thinking about probably 2 years. And I know that's probably things that people don't want to hear. We wish that this would be over tomorrow. But just looking at it as a number game, and unfortunately, that's kind of how you have to look at this. Russia can just continue to throw bodies. They have them. They have the numbers to just continue to send them, no matter if they're taking a lot more losses, and they are taking more losses than Ukrainian military. That's definitely what's happening. But unfortunately, it's a number game. How many guys do you have? I think one thing I did notice when I was on the fronts is young commanders, being put in positions that being put in positions that I don't think they were quite ready for. I talked to this one tank commander, had dinner with him and his wife and his child. He was granted 10 days leave to come back to Kyiv. And I guess he just, how that ever came to be, he was granted that. And talking with him, I asked him, I was like, what's your experience on tanks, being a tank commander? And, I was like, what other tanks have you operated? And he's like, never been on a tank, never seen, and I've really seen a tank. I've seen a tank at the museum. I was like, so wait, you weren't trained on tanks prior service or anything? He's like, no. He's like, I took one or two colleges or classes in college of military, I guess a military class. I'm not sure what it was, but basically because of those two classes he took in college, gave the Ukrainian military looked at that as, hey, this guy should be a tank commander. Now this guy is in charge over 6 tanks and 36 men. Talk about, being thrown into a job that you have to learn on the spot. Operating a $800,000 equipment and expecting to do so in a manner to push forward and push the enemy out. So I guess the reason why I say that, and I bring that that story up, is what the Western countries can do is can continue to feed Ukraine what they need when it comes to military equipment, armor, tanks. Hopefully we start to get more, you give Ukraine more air, something for the skies, the fight above. But we really do, Ukrainian military, they need the training. They need to have things set up back on the west side of the country where they can send these young commanders that are put in these positions, give them a couple weeks course of how to operate and be a tank commander, and then send them forward, and then send the next group to the training facility. Training, you can give somebody a gun, right? You can give anybody, hey, here's a weapon, but they're not going to know how to operate it, let alone use it efficiently. It takes a long time to be a good shooter. In the Marine Corps in boot camp, I can't tell you how many times we call it dry shooting. So basically no round in the chamber. You cock your gun and you sight in and you hit your trigger and you hear this little click, and that's it. And then you just do it again. We did it every day for hours. We would all be laying down or sitting up or on our knees, pointing our weapons at this barrel that they had placed throughout the boot camp area. And anytime we had downtime, our drill instructor is like, sight in. And all you hear is just people racking their gun and hitting their trigger and practicing all these little steps, muscle memory. So I'm going back to, Ukraine and how these guys are only gaining a couple weeks worth of training, infantry training, and then are expected to operate on the fronts. So training, I think, would make such a big impact on pushing Russian out instead of just playing this trench war game where we just shoot a couple rounds, we send a couple artilleries over, we run around on the tanks, we make our rounds with the tanks, and then we call it a day. If Ukraine's going to be the victory of this war, and they will be, I am certain Ukraine will take victory. There's going to need more offensive movements, and that is teams working together in combined small arm effects to push Ukraine out. So hopefully that answers your question. Was I missing anything there?
No. That was something I would like to ask you. And the only maybe addition I could ask you for is, do you think it's a viable option to introduce boots on the ground, the Western ones, or is it complicated politically? I mean, is there any prospects on that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Westerners that are coming in are very restricted on what we can and cannot do. It's not till you are able to basically somebody take you under their wings as who has government paper to allow you to travel and to carry a weapon. Or you have a lot of groups out there, a lot of Westerner groups that they have the training, they have the skill set, and unfortunately, and they have the desire to help. I mean, these guys are eager and they're ready and they want to fight and help Ukraine. Unfortunately, they're restricted on government paperwork to work in areas, because you can't just go up to the front and say, "Oh, I'm here, you guys. I got a weapon," or "Can I get it? Can I get a weapon? Because somebody, hey, I need one. Can I get a couple of grenades too? Like, I appreciate it." Like, you can't do that. As much as that would be great. And I think some Americans and some Westerners probably do come in Ukraine thinking, "Oh, I'll just get to the front and, they'll just hand me a weapon and on I go." But that's not how that works. So for Westerners, it's a struggle. And I think because of how quickly the war came around, it was, everybody was like, is it going to happen? If it's not going to happen, I think there was a very much ball was dropped when it came to organizing anybody coming in from the West to put them in good, to use their skills to the fullest. I honestly, if I was running the show there, I would have given the command. Any Westerners that come into this country immediately gets picked up and they get brought to this certain location, and they get their skills are set out on the table of what they can and cannot do. And basically I would send that out to all the commanders on the front saying, "Hey, you need a medic? We got them. You need somebody who knows how to operate tanks or artillery or small arms or what have you, drones." They can pull from the pool of Westerners that came in. That's just perfect world. That would have been great to cross the border and say, "Hey, you're an American. We need you to report to this location," and then get there and have them ask me those hard questions. What kind of training do you have? What can you show us proof of where you've been, like in Iraq, Afghanistan? Can you and just get these, get to know what these guys can offer, and then send them out to the front where their skills can be best used, instead of us roaming around the country trying to find something. It was like a needle in a haystack. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.
And I'll ask an additional question. So you've been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and there are multiple countries around the world that go in and fighting different fights in different countries. And we had this discussion before, like why, and we know it can escalate to a World War III and nukes and stuff like this, but you've been fighting for America in different areas. Why America is not going fighting in Ukraine to stop this? What's going on? And I know it's a little bit complex, and you don't have to respond to that. And it can lead to a very crazy scenario. But like, I think a lot of Ukrainians asking themselves why we're still in a war. Like,
so everybody's got their own theories, right? We just finished up a 15-year 15 years in Iraq, operating in Iraq and Afghanistan, and everybody saw the exiting of Afghanistan. Afghanistan. It was horrible. I have my theories, and I don't dive into all these major new networks, and I don't get involved in extreme political and debates, or do a ton of research. I just base off what I see, and I know what I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then what I see in Ukraine, and why America and other countries are not stepping in. Because you're right, it is very much a black and white war. There is absolutely who's in the right and who's in the wrong. I wish America would step in. We should have, because I feel like the rest of the world is kind of waiting for us to make that first move. Some would argue with that and say that we kind of lost that stature, that position in the world of being the first one to step in. I still believe it holds true, but so it's a very interesting question because, well,
we can cut this whole part.
No, it's totally fine. Why is America? I'm trying to shorten it up so I don't just go on a tangent up here. Why Americans not involved?
Yeah, I think the picture is black and white when it comes to understanding the motivations of the parts, and therefore who's a bad guy and who's a good guy. But at the same time, the world is far from being black and white when it comes to the interests of the parties. Like, for instance, there are many benefits that, for at least it's how we see and perceive these things from here in Ukraine. There are many things that the West and generally the world needs from Russia. Like, for instance, resources, gas, oil, doing business with Russia as usual. And it is even more true not only about the West, but also about the global South, about the Asian countries, about the stance of China, about it. So there is a broader picture, and there is no need to plunge into everything right now. But the general idea is that the world may have an impulse, like, we need to help Ukraine, but then they go like, but wait, maybe it would be beneficial if we leave some room for maybe better time prospects with Russia, to do business with Russia as usual, and to benefit mutually from that. So I think that is something that stops the West and the world generally from going full throttle on helping Ukraine. And that is something that translates, unfortunately, in considerable losses of Ukrainians themselves.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're 100% right on that. There's a lot to it, and obviously can't point just one person, but I don't know. I mean, I hear you. There's a lot of aspects to it, but I feel like if we had anybody else sitting in a certain seat, we would have been there. No questions asked. And previous administration in America, they would have reacted. the way that we should have reacted. Because what do you see at the Capitol, right? At what's in St. Michael's, they got the sandbags, all around the statues. Well, what you see up there is written, what am I trying to say? Banners out of bed sheets that people have written stuff, and it said, a lot of them say, "Where are you, America? Like, you took our weapons from us. You were supposed to back us up." And really, that is very much. And I think me and Max had this conversation, and I had it with other people. And it sounds like the only reason we are not there is because of translation. We had said that we were going to help you guys out by you giving up your weapons. But then when you translate that over, I guess it translates over as well, think about it.
Versus, yes. That is something, yes.
I've heard that.
Generally, the story here is that back in the 90s, for our listeners, back in the 90s, there was a document when Ukraine gave up on its nuclear arsenal. Mm-hmm. And to do so, it signed the so-called Budapest Memorandum, in which it said that we are going to give up our nukes. And in exchange, we're going to have security guarantees from the US, from the UK, from Russia, and France. Yep. However, what read in the Ukrainian text as a security guarantees read in the legally superseding English document as security assurances and not guarantees. Yeah. And that's why when things started happening in 2014, the West said, everything we have to do is just to convene a consultation, is just, to talk to each other, to try to figure things out, but we are not obliged to act on any security guarantees, as in to engage with boots on the ground, because we never, it turned out, according to them, we had never talked about that kind of thing. So yes, that's the reason.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Just over translation and between two documents, and it's what do you do? But you got a lot, I will tell you, and I mean, I could be, I don't think I'm wrong, because everybody I talk to would sit there and say, we need to be there in Ukraine. You got a lot of military guys, a lot of my buddies that are here that are sitting there just itching for the word to go, and they would be there in a heartbeat. So hopefully, if Ukrainians are hearing that, just know that we have your back, your support, and we wish we could be boots on the ground with you, but we're restricted. Well, I'm not restricted. I'm not military anymore, so I can go anytime. But other buddies of mine.
Are you looking for a sponsor?
Yeah. Hey, if somebody's out there who's want to send me back, please do reach out.
Perfect. And that's a perfect segue to our final question. Yeah, we're already in the final. What do you want to share with the people that are listening? What's your message being here? What your message to the world? What your message to others? What do you want to share? What do you want to tell people?
I think that's probably the hardest question you're throwing at me. Listen, it's honestly, it's very simple. I'm just one person, but I know that many people working together can accomplish big things. I mean, one person can accomplish amazing things. We see that in our history, but we also see when people come together and united into one, talk about life-changing experiences and that this world has seen. So I guess I would leave it as, and don't forget about Ukraine. Don't forget about, freedom and how important that is in this world. Super important. And we're seeing it being threatened. It might not be us, it might not be our freedom being threatened, but if it could be threatened by Russia to Ukraine, then that it won't stop there. And now we're kind of seeing it from China. Unfortunately, now we're seeing a little pushback from them. of having one of our own representatives go visit a place and getting told that she wasn't allowed to. So these are those little things that I hope that people can start to pick up and realize, like, we need to be mindful of what could be what can come up from this. So don't forget about Ukraine, and keep yourself frosty.
And as we share all the time, keep Ukrainians in your minds, hearts, and actions, because we need that. And just for you to know, whenever I share what we do here with Ukrainians, they feeling blessed and they feeling that they're being heard and being supported. So put your flags out there, put your Ukrainian symbols out there, go to rallies. And again, keep Ukraine on your minds, hearts, and actions. Maxym, anything to add before we close?
I just want to join into to this argument you make that do not forget Ukraine, because indeed we here in Ukraine perceive as if we perceive that we are not just fighting for Ukraine, because we have been listening to Russian propaganda long enough to understand, and to not just to understand, but just to listen to the very words, not just to read between the lines, but to listen to the very words that Russia is not going to stop here in Ukraine. Russia has already said that the Baltic states are our land. They have already threatened Poland multiple times. They have once, not so long ago, had that much influence over the Warsaw Pact bloc, and so on and so forth. There are so many other threats we're talking here about. And when we say, don't forget about Ukraine, we just not want inspiration. We just not want knowing that we're on the agenda, but we also want the West to understand that we are chipping into the joint efforts, into the joint venture of resisting Russia. And Ukraine has, how do I put it? Ukraine has made its peace with the fact that these are going to be our lives that we sacrifice, but we need, as a trade-off of a kind, to understand that we are fighting with the resources that a big chunk of which we receive from the West, because that is nothing less but fair.
If Ukraine will fall, the West will fall. And this is a message that people need to understand. So, once again, keep Ukrainians on your minds, hearts, and actions. Thank you so much, Sergio, for being with us. Thank you so much for fighting for Ukraine, for our freedom, for the West, for the free world. We need more people like you out there to take this task. And I'm sure they are, and we're going to find them, we're going to interview them, we're going to bring them here for them to share their stories, so you will know what's happening in Ukraine, and that will kind of inspire you to act to support Ukraine. So thank you so much for listening. Follow us on social media to learn more, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you all.